Mike, I'm really excited for our next guest. Legendary former Buffalo Bills linebacker, NFL veteran. You can follow him on Instagram, Lorenzo_John. He's a co-host of the Applied Pressure podcast on YouTube. Lorenzo Alexander joins us. Lorenzo, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, brother. Life is good, being busy. I'm probably more busy than when I was playing, but it's a good thing, spending time with my kids, my family, and then, I'm finally enjoying watching football. It doesn't feel like work anymore for me. I've been away for 6 years now, so really enjoyed that Bills-Ravens game the other night, sitting on the couch cheering for the boys. It was fun to watch and see them come back and finish that game off the way I know they are.
Speaking of liking football again, what was the experience like for you watching that game with so much investment? What was the whirlwind of emotions like?
It was crazy. It was exhilarating. You could see like the ebbs and the flows. Having been in football, you know how it doesn't come down to a handful of plays, but it comes down to a handful of plays. And so when you're looking at it, and we're down by a couple of scores, you're like, man, what about that play? And then at the end of the game, you're like, oh, what about those 2-point conversions? If we would just kick the field goal, it'd be a tied game right now already. It wouldn't be as stressful. And so it's, playing that Monday morning quarterback, in real time, just trying to figure out where we could get those extra things. And then you see guys like Ed Oliver, obviously Josh Allen, Coleman, just a slew of guys stepping up and making plays right on time, and just showing how great they are. And really what Sean McDermott has done is just building consistency, staying true to who you are, the process. And when you play hard and you have great character guys and guys that can make plays, good things tend to happen.
So you're not looking at Derrick Henry's 42-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter and saying, "Oh, this is over." You're not thinking that league,
Well,
right?
you feel like that, but because I've been in those rooms with those guys, I'm a former player, and I understand how the mentality of a competitor is. You never really feel like you're out of it, especially when you got Josh back there, right? You just need an opportunity to get the football. It's not like they were stopping us either. And so that's something from a defender standpoint you don't want to see. We definitely got to be better gaps down. Our corners and back end, we have to just tackle a guy and get him down,
Mhm.
right? We can't allow an explosive to turn into a TD. And obviously, he's a monster. It's easier said than done. But that's a team that we're going to see again, and we can't allow that to happen. I don't know if we can replicate the comeback, right? We can't depend on the comeback. We have to snuff them out early and devise a plan, which when I was there, we found ways. And I know Sean, along with Bobby, they'll figure out a way, who's a defensive coordinator, figure out a way that's going to at least slow them down and not be able to put up a 40 burger on you.
Lorenzo, you mentioned Josh Allen in the comeback. The fourth quarter was one of the most impressive performances that I've ever seen from a quarterback. 251 passing yards in
Yeah.
the final frame, obviously leading them back from 16 down to win over the final 3.5 minutes. What impressed you the most about Josh Allen in those biggest moments of that big game on Sunday?
He's just really calm. I think a little earlier on in his career, and I think a lot of people talk about this, just being a little too erratic. The moment is never too big for him. He's always calm under pressure, and he's making the right play. And even in that period of time, there were some balls where he just kind of threw away or just let the play go away and not try to do too much, which I think is just as important as some of those big plays, those big throws, hitting guys in stride. And it's always better to be a little lucky than great when you have Coleman catch the tip ball. And I don't know who he was throwing it to, but it got tipped and Coleman made the play. But Josh is a gamer. He's been that since he's been in the league. He'll continue to be that. He just becomes more efficient as he grows and more grounded as he matures. And I think we'll see this more often than not. And obviously, he's a reigning MVP, but I think he'll just be more consistent from week in and week out. One thing I think it did have me wanting more of is Keon Coleman. Man, I went out to training camp this year and just seeing how dominant he is. I wish they could throw the ball to him almost every single time. That's the type of playmaker he is, because good things happen when the ball is thrown his way.
When you look at Buffalo as a team, you survive a really big test against one of the deepest rosters in football. But you mentioned Keon Coleman, you talk about James Cook, you talk about the weapons, you talk about the talent at all three levels on defense. Are the Bills now the team to beat in the AFC? I know we're talking big picture, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit after
Yeah.
1 week, but it was a big win against the Baltimore Ravens. Can you look at the Bills right now and say that they're the team to beat on that side of the bracket?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, and I would always hesitate because we do have the Kansas City Chiefs, and even though they lost, right, they're still the defending AFC champions, and right, and nothing is won in week one, right, and so it's the totality of the season. But the way the Bills are playing and what they've done before, they and I don't want to say they typically lose these games. They got to figure out a way to win these games in the playoffs, in particular against Kansas City. They've done it against Baltimore, right? And so that's what I'm looking at, right? Because the regular season is the regular season. I got my son who's 11 and he loves watching football. And he's like, Daddy, man, outside of, Philly, the Ravens, and I think he mentioned one other team that we play, man, we gonna be good, right? We got this down. It's 13-3, but what are we gonna do in the playoffs? So he's even aware of that. And in particular against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, when you're in those moments, can we find ways to win like we just did against Baltimore, right? We've done it in the regular season multiple times now. Now it's that additional layer of pressure what the playoffs brings in performing there. And so I say yes, right? Everything in my body wants to say yes, but the skeptic and I guess the mature adult in me says it's still the Chiefs and being able to get over that hump.
I love the idea of an 11-year-old Bills fan whose father played for the Bills, looking at a game like that and saying, well, nothing really matters until we beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Nothing matters. You're jaded at 11 years old by this team. It's fascinating and beautiful in its own way.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
when you
that's
look
cool.
at the Chiefs, go ahead, Lorenzo.
No, you got it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look at the Chiefs and, the performance in the Super Bowl, I think, raised some alarm bells, right? What the Eagles did to them defensively, just taking it to Patrick Mahomes without even blitzing. They go
Right.
down to Brazil. The Chargers take care of business, do enough to win the game. As a former player, a former elite defensive player, what are you seeing out of Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City offense? Because just for somebody who analyzes the game,
Yeah.
writes about the game, talks to people inside the league, it feels like some of that mystique might be gone or at least diminishing. What are
Yeah.
you seeing out of Kansas City right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some level of that. I mean, they've played a lot of football, over the last 6, 7 years, a lot more. They probably almost have another season and a half over a lot of teams, especially the ones that aren't making the playoffs. And so that weighs on you at some point, right? There's a lot of moving pieces, right? You can't necessarily carry in last year, this year. Everybody's looking to try to knock you off. I mean, you are playing in Brazil, which is a big shift, and we know they typically win those games when they're out of the country, but it's still something that this team has to deal with. I would say probably the main thing, right? The running game, getting that re-solidified and what that looks like. And I saw a stat today that Pat Mahomes over the last maybe, let's say, 3 to 4 years, the shot ball that's normally like a 50-50 ball has kind of declined down into the 20s. And so I think a lot of that is with the receiver issues that we've seen throughout that time, right? Obviously, losing a guy like Tyreek Hill in free agency. Now you have Xavier Worthy and Rice out. And so they're working and winning in a lot of ways with less than what they had when they, probably were at their height offensively. And so I think they got to figure that out. And knowing Pat Mahomes, right, knowing Travis Kelce, the rest of those guys, and really Andy Reid, they'll find out a way to win and get into the playoffs. And hopefully by then they'll be at full strength in their terms, right, as far as having their whole receiver crew and then having that running game. Because even when you go back to Andy Reid, when he was with Philly, and I faced him when I was in the NFC East, they used to run that rock, whether it was Westbrook or LaShawn McCoy, and then have the play action game and take deep shots with McNabb or Vic, down the field. That is like their bread and butter and how they really, because they're really balanced, right? I think people think about Pat Mahomes, they like to spread it around. They like to run that rock too because of who Andy Reid is and where he came from in this league. And then they like to throw a lot of razzle dazzle around it. But I think for me, it always starts with the running game for them.
And Lorenzo, just bring it back to the Bills here. Obviously, they're going to be in the mix all year, and you said it. They win these games in the regular season, but the roadblock seems to be Kansas City in the postseason. If Mark Andrews doesn't drop that 2-point conversion ball in the divisional game last year, maybe we talk about that team a little bit differently going into this season. But you've been in meeting rooms, you've been on the field as an elite linebacker in this league, in that building. What does Sean McDermott need to do and that defense need to do to get past the Kansas Cities, to get past the Baltimores again, to maybe get past Joe Burrow and the Bengals in the postseason? What's the biggest adjustment from here, what we've seen so far this year, for them to get over
Yeah.
that hump?
I don't think there's no special thing that you can do in terms of like communicate something differently, or hey, let's have practice at this time of day, or let's do this special defense. It just really comes down to executing in the moment, right? And when you look at it, each year it's probably has been somebody different who wasn't able to execute at the level needed to beat those teams. We talk about that, even like on even a more of a micro level in game, right? If somebody differently in a game jumps off sides, it could be 11 different people, right? Cumulative, you are in a very bad spot, even though I as an individual only made one mistake. And I think that's what it's been. When you look back at the different games, a busted coverage or a bad ball or maybe a drop ball or a missed block, right? And it's these little things done by different people. And so they have to figure out collectively to obviously minimize the times that you make mistakes, because we're always chasing a perfect game. I think also when those things happen, really be able to be the one that comes out on top and not give up the big play like Derrick Henry did in the fourth quarter, right? Fumbling the ball, not that let that be the Bills when it comes playoff time. And I think that's really the shift, right? And that's a lot of things that go into that. Some of it's a little bit of luck, getting the right call. So those are things that I guess historically hasn't really been in the Bills' favor. And I'm talking about stuff that's like, we just need that one thing to happen for us that nobody really can control outside of just doing your job. And so that's what I'm looking for. That's really the difference. And not allowing, when you have some of these younger pieces that have come in, not allow the moment to feel bigger than what it is. Yes, the history, yes, it's the playoffs, but it's still football. And if you can have that mindset when you go out there, you can play free, you can play fast, because you don't have this additional burden that you're carrying with you. So I think that has to be more of the sense throughout the week when you go in to prepare. Man, it's just another game. We've been here. Don't allow all the history of what has happened. Don't carry that into the game, right? Don't be thinking about that when it wins. Is it going to happen to us this year? Yeah, because you're thinking about it. And so I think that may be the biggest thing. How do you do that mentally? Address it, but not allow it to consume you, especially in game.
And that's got to be a challenge year after year after year when you climb the mountain, don't quite reach the peak, start at the bottom of the mountain again. Yeah. McDermott's got to have his work cut out for him, not being overcritical of guys, not sending this message that like it's in fate's hands. It's got to be a challenge for him to keep everybody motivated when everybody's eyes, even now, like we were talking about, is on what's going to happen on like January 18th, hypothetically.
Right. Yeah. And I think Sean has done a great job of that, just talking to guys and having been in that room with him. He does a good job of balancing things and keeping things in perspective and making sure guys stay hungry and work ethic. And right, that process thing is not like, I know it probably sounds like a cliche now, but that's like the culture in his core of how he goes about business. And I know I kind of brought that up, right, because the call or a bounce ball, but you control most of the game, right? Those are like one-off type plays, and he's going to definitely always emphasize doing your job, executing at a high level, being accountable, right? Putting in the necessary work so that when you go out there, you're prepared and you can allow your athleticism and who God made you uniquely to go out there and shine and do plays, right? And so that just takes, when you're talking about guys that are veterans that have been there, the guys to a rookie, that's really hard to do, or to get every guy from the practice squad guy to Josh Allen to do. And that's where the ebbs and flows. And that's why typically teams that have young guys that step up that you're not counting on, that's where you get that extra oomph that you need to take you over the top. And so I think it's going to come from some of the younger guys on the team that allow this team to get over the top. Because Josh is going to show up. Knox and Dion and Cook and Ed and all the guys that have been in that core, those guys are going to show up. But what about some of those younger guys, some of those newer pieces? What are they going to do when that moment is there? How are they going to step up and shine and kind of create their legacy within this Bills culture?
It's funny because McDermott is very good at that. I think John Harbaugh is very good at that.
Yeah.
Andy Reid is obviously very good at that. Where did Harbaugh and McDermott learn it from? Probably from Andy Reid, from when you were at Washington facing them every week.
Right. Yeah, and it's crazy how you see like the top coaches typically come from the same tree. They do things very similarly, obviously with their own twist and flair to their own personalities, but it's really cool to see that tree, the different trees in the league, and how typically there's a right way about going about it, and those guys figure it out together. And there's a couple of them in the league right now that makes it fun to watch. Because I've got, even with the Shanahan tree, right, I got to play with a lot of those guys with the Commanders and see how well most of them are doing from team to team.
And you mentioned the young guys having to step up. You mentioned being there in training camp. You got some eyes on this roster. Look into the crystal ball a little bit here. Who are one or two young guys that could be the difference makers for Buffalo?
Oh man, I mean, I think Keon is still young in a lot of ways and still growing. Yeah. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to still come out and do really well. On the defensive side, you called me. I wish I would have looked at the roster. But what's the young corner's name?
Hairston, but he's hurt right now.
Yeah, so when he gets back, right, that's a guy that's going to, I thought was really well that you saw Trey working with. I don't know how serious his knee injury is. He coming back this year or not? But that was another guy that I liked when I was there with them, seeing how Trey kind of took him under his wing. And I was just watching Pat McAfee show, right? And they had Bruce Arians on, and I was with him. And he said as a head coach, most of the time he was looking for young guys, especially rookies, to be able to help them around Thanksgiving time, right? You got a time to acclimate, right? That's about halfway through the season. Guys start getting nicked up around that time. Your playing time ticks up. We start depending on you, but you become a pro, right? About that time. You at least see what it looks like. And so around that time, you'll start seeing that those guys, probably week 6, 7, and 8, the guys that start separating themselves that we really didn't think too much about showing up. So whether it's special teams, offense, or defense, you'll start seeing those guys take their game to the next level.
And what's great about the way the Bills do things is they do have a lot of rookies who did not have to play much in week 1. All these guys like Walker on the defensive line, they can take their time and make their contribution around Thanksgiving. They're not being asked to do it here on, September 6th or whatever.
Hey, Lorenzo, I know you said that you're coaching your son's youth football team, so I want to take off the former player hat, put on the head coach / GM hat for a second here.
Yeah.
You're building a roster from scratch. You're building a defense from scratch. Who are 1 or 2 linebackers that you're picking around the league to be the foundational pieces of your defense? Who are the top linebackers in the sport right now, in your opinion?
Man, I mean, there's a lot of great guys out there. I mean, obviously Fred Warner probably is at the top. He's been doing it a long time. A guy like Demario Davis has been doing it for a long time. My man, Matt Milano, brings a uniqueness to the game as well. Those 3 are probably the guys I probably see the most and watch the most. I tell you, probably kind of a dark horse that nobody really talks about because he's still young and just got moved to Mike this year is Mac Wilson. He was with the Patriots for a little bit and then came out here. He's a really good football player, plays hard, is versatile, can rush the passer, play off the ball. Obviously, that's a lot of what my roots are. So finding guys like that, those are probably the guys, because I cover the Cardinals here, that I really like, and especially him. He's my favorite player outside of Budda Baker on the Cardinals defense. So watching him play violently, lead his team, and be impactful is what I try to help my young boys, right? My 11-year-old son, I have a 14-year-old as well, or a 15-year-old that's a freshman in high school. Those are the characteristics that I want them to emulate when they're out on the football field and in the community.
They playing defense or playing both ways?
Well, they play both ways. They're athletes right now. I said, man, well, I don't care where the coach puts you. Obviously, I'm going to put you everywhere because I want you to be a football player. And most kids are so young. We have this specialization in sports anyway, right? When we just play baseball, football, or basketball. But even within the sport of football, hey, man, you're a receiver at 10. No, you're not. You need to move around. You got to play tight end. You got to learn how to block, right? Play some receiver. Play some fullback. You got to do a little bit of everything and learn how the game is played, so that whenever your position becomes your every down position, you know what the game is, and that's what really helped me. And so that's what I do with my kids, and I do the same thing with my son. Right? It's this big term in daddy ball, which I kind of hate. But hey, I'm a daddy and I'm coaching ball, so it's daddy ball where I'm at. But I hold my son to a high standard. I hold him to the same standard I hold everybody else's kid too as well. And so he's moving around. So even like the other day I had him with the O-line, D-line, just working some stuff. And he's probably my biggest son. My other son was a little bit smaller. And so he may be a tight end. He may be a tackle or that type of body. He's like, Daddy, why am I over here? I said, because you got to learn how to block, man. You got to put your hand in the dirt, man. This is where the game is won and lost at. It's the most important position out here. And you played to the same standard. You want to be a receiver just like everybody? Pat my heart down, man. Put your hand in the dirt, baby.
You played 2 ways into college, right? You were playing offensive line for a while in college. Do I have that right?
So in high school I played everything, and then in college I actually played just defensive tackle. Okay. And early in my career in the league, I actually played offensive, defensive tackle, special teams. Started being that guy that was very flexible. The thing that's really popular right now, man, I don't know why, guys are getting paid to be flexible. Before, back in the day when I was doing it, was like the sentiment or the term people used to use was jack of all trades, master of none. Right. But that's not even the complete saying, right? It goes on. I forget the last part, but the essence of it is being flexible and being valuable in multiple spaces is almost better, could be better than just being a master of that one thing, right? Because when Brian Orakpo came in, or we had Ryan Kerrigan came in, they drafted him high, and I got bumped. Oh
Mhm.
man, I'm not starting no more. Oh, well, I can still play special teams. I can still rush the passer. I still had
Yeah.
a job. So it worked out in my favor. And that's why I try to really help young athletes in particular kind of cultivate that flexibility. So whenever they become who they are in their position, they still understand how the game is played holistically.
Lorenzo, this has been a ton of fun. Really appreciate the insight and the analysis. Tell us a little bit about the Applied Pressure podcast on YouTube. We're going to drop a direct link to the
So
podcast in the YouTube description of this episode, but people will go and check it out. What can they expect?
a lot of great things. So I think the main thing will be because my nickname that I got in the NFL when I was in Washington was called the one man gang, right? And so it's really one man's gang. So really talking to the slew of people that have supported me, coached me, mentored me, guys that are in my peer group, guys that I see and respected that really had an impact in my life, and I see having an impact now, right? Because it does take a village. And then I would say number two, like just educating people, specifically the youth sports, about what it's really about. It's not about X's and O's and winning games. It's about building charactered young people, right? Using the simulated adversity that football provides to help them be impactful. Because honestly, most people don't play beyond middle school. That's just the numbers, right? And it gets smaller and smaller. And at some point, if you're lucky like me, and play 15 years, how are you going to be impactful when you're done, right? Because the game isn't your identity. So those are probably the two main things that I'll be talking about on there, and then dropping some football knowledge as well, getting on the board. But it should be really, hopefully beneficial, show a lot of great value, just educating people around the game and what I think is the best way to utilize sports specifically as far as developing the next generation of athlete.
He's Lorenzo Alexander, full of insight both in life and in football. You can follow him on Instagram at Lorenzo_John. Check out the Applied Pressure podcast on YouTube. You can hit the link below in the description of this episode and of this interview. Lorenzo, man, really appreciate the time. Look forward to talking to you further up the road, my friend.
All right, appreciate you, brother. See you soon.